Hello, this is Jackie B. Peterson, author of Better, Smarter, Richer, 7 Business Principles for Solos, Encores, and Creative Entrepreneurs. I'm delighted to have you join us this morning on Solo Pro Radio. But let me take a second to tell you about Better, Smarter, Richer. Better, Smarter, Richer is a book designed to help you, the solo entrepreneur, be more successful in your enterprise. What I have identified over years of working with as a consultant to many businesses is that solo enterprises are distinctly different from traditional businesses, because traditional businesses teach you to hire employees in order to expand, and the next thing you know, you're not being able to do what you love. You're managing employees instead. In Better, Smarter, Richer, we teach you how to build your business by outsourcing the services that you need and focusing your work into a deep and narrow niche, building your expertise so that you can grow your solo business and, in other words, make a great living doing what you love. I just want to tell you there's some upcoming events. Actually, tomorrow, April 24th, we are going to be doing the program with AARP called Finding Work After 50 Plus. It will be held at the Workforce Center on 42nd and Northeast Killingsworth. I think it's sold out, but there's a waiting list if you want to tune into that. Also, our next free symposium at Portland Community College is going to be on June 18th that evening from 6 to 9 p.m. And we have our next Better, Smarter, Richer study group starting on June 3rd. Hope you'll take a look at those. Go to the website, Better, Smarter, Richer, sign up for the free newsletter, and join the conversation on the blog, and, of course, buy your copy of Better, Smarter, Richer so that you can do the work that will give you the great ahas and insights and help you be better and more successful at your work. Today, I'm having a great guest. His name is Roger Anunsen, and Roger left the practice of law nearly 12 years ago and found his passion working with elders and seniors and exploring the dimensions of the new brain science. Since that time, he's become a part-time van driver at an ALF and was promoted to activity director, invented a cognitive intervention program called aerobics, was a brain health program consultant for AARP, co-founded MindRamp, a consultancy, and is currently the part-time faculty member in the Gerontology department at Portland Community College. Roger has a wealth of enthusiasm for putting into practice current brain research and translating it into strategies to protect and enhance the mental function of mature minds. He and his partner, Michael Patterson, say, our mission is making long life worth living. I love that. Hello, Roger.
Hello, and I love that, too, because that's a quest.
I know.
Thank you.
I'm just glad you're here. You have such an interesting story to tell. So tell your story to our listeners about how you became so interested in brain health and brain science.
Oh, we've only got an hour. The reason that I'm excited about brain science is because it's brand new. And when I got into brain science, you might say I learned brain science backward. What happened after I burned out as an attorney, and actually it was about 15 years ago when I burned out. I was really drifting, didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew that someday I would find it, and the someday came within a year. My wife was reading a newspaper ad and said, here's one, van driver, part-time, ALF, and before I could ask what an ALF was, she said, I think it's like a nursing home, and there's lots of nanas there. Nana was my grandmother, the only grandparent I knew, and she had died a couple of years earlier. I took the job. I was elevated to activity director immediately, was trained with the 3 Bs. Don't forget the 3 Bs, he said, Bibles, birthdays, and bingo.
I love that.
And I never forgot the 3 Bs, but that actually was my only training. And what I did was to start working with elders, treated them just like Nana, and pretty soon I realized that I had invented something that I named memory aerobics, squished it together for memerobics. All I knew was that the brain was between the ears and had 5 senses, so I used eye aerobics, ear aerobics, etc., all 5 senses, and I was discovered by neuroscientists. I didn't really know anything about neuroscience in the brain, but I saw what was happening when elders who were lonely gathered together and had some fun. And so what I then got was fascinated about what the brain was doing. So your question, how did I become interested? I learned a core of knowledge, what I call a core of knowledge, working with elders. And then I figured out what is it that makes their brains come alive when they gather together and learn something at any age and become excited about it. They did clinical trials on what I had invented, and next thing I know, I am teaching others because I had to learn a foreign language called neuroscience, and I had to translate it into another language called plain English, and that's where I am.
Oh, that's fabulous. That's a fabulous story. So tell us a little bit, what's happening in brain science today and, that we all need to be aware of and better understand?
And I think that's really the core of why I was asked to come several years ago to Portland Community College and try an experimental course with no teaching degree or background, but a real passion for translating all this brand new neuroscience. It is brand new. I've often said that 95% of everything we know, Jackie, about our brains was learned since Mount St. Helens blew up. And what that means is that everything changes, and primarily for the better, so that the pipeline of science that's been so full is brimming right now. So the excitement really is in a do-it-yourself battle, and that's why solo entrepreneurs really have a field ahead of them that's going to benefit from breakthroughs in neuroscience that tell people it is something that you can do, but you got to do it yourself. Nobody has enough money to buy their way out of cognitive decline. But what we have is enough tools that people can learn. That's the knowledge they get by learning what the real neuroscience is about their brains, and then employ it where it will allow them to thrive for the rest of their lives.
That is such a big deal. We all have such a huge fear. We know there's going to be possibly a long slope of physical decline. I mean, we see it every day, but I think we fear that mental decline, and I love what you just said. So these are, you're making available do-it-yourself tools that you can keep your brain healthy and active as long as possible. Wow.
That's right, and it as Betty Davis says, getting old ain't for sissies.
Right,
but
right.
we now know that even if your wheels come off, even if you have some creaks in the chassis, if your engine understands how to keep it going, you may be able to have a different future for your family, for yourself, because you're keeping your brain sharper. You're able to then extend the longevity into a successful longevity. We like to say that having a long life, but having it one that your cognitive abilities fail, that's not good. And having a short life with cognitive abilities that stay together isn't good. So you want a long life that you live well. And so we like to say it's a quality of longevity. And my partner Michael coined a word called qual-longevity. And that's our goal, is to have quality of life through this extended life expectancy, clear into our 90s and beyond, but be active instead of declining that way.
That's just fantastic. So can you tell us a little bit more about what exactly is memoaerobics?
Yes, memoaerobics was the first part of what I did, and that's what was discovered by the neuroscientist, and the medical journal article was written. What I did was to basically take the five senses and have a focused hour on the one of the five senses, in which we'd either do taste aerobics or touch aerobics or scent aerobics. And what it did was to focus attention of the elders on what they were doing, and they lost track of time. They were having a good time doing something that was totally different than what they normally would do. It's like throwing a pebble into a stagnant pond. It creates a ripple, and it feels good. Now I know 10 years later that what was happening is that when I focused attention on one of the five senses with an event that gathered people together, I was causing neurochemicals to pop out in their brain. They would pop out just like a champagne cork. They would lose track of time, and once they'd go back to the table the next day and tell their table mate what they were doing, the room filled up with one or two more. I remember one time we had Margaret, who was really enthusiastic, and her table mate, Helen, simply did not think she needed any type of cognitive activity. She was fine, thank you very much, and very nice lady, but she just didn't want to engage. And one day she came up to me after she saw that Margaret seemed to get healthier over time and enthusiastic and looking forward to getting up to the next activity or the next event. And she came up to me and may as well have said, I'll have what she's having. That over and over again, that people saw their peers who look forward to tomorrow instead of just forgetting what day it was.
Wow. Giving them something to be excited about. Yes. So with MemAerobics, now are you still doing that? Are you teaching it to seniors or to people who work with seniors? I mean, how is that? What's happening with it?
It's actually evolved. We still do MemAerobics, lots of the same games that I invented. We still have a card game that's used by therapists and by activity directors called Animal Congregation, so those still survive. But what we found is that education is the model. These are not games or puzzles, and so it's evolved into an education model rather than an activity model. We still do the MemAerobics, but now we have programs that are under our new company called MindRamp, and that's formed after I was hired by AARP to do some additional programs that would engage people's brains by learning how their brains work, how they fail, and what they need to do, and then training some folks in senior centers and church groups and communities to learn how to become brain health ambassadors and teach others. So it's really the ripple effect that we've now got of education. That's our model, and Michael and I both teach at various levels, CEOs, we teach executive trainings, we teach staff training, and so the MindRamp method is now was originally used in the MemAerobics programs. Now we've got a MindRamp method that's used in businesses, organizations, and individuals.
Wow, that's really terrific. So it's already, you're beginning it to spread, and you can see it making a difference, is what I understand. You know, when you talk with people, you can see the change, or when you teach people, you can see change.
Well, and the difference, Jackie, is the confidence. If someone lacks confidence, then they are not going to succeed. The odds of them succeeding in the challenge of keeping your cognitive abilities is really, really a steep hill. But if they understand what to do, and they know it's not going to be quick, there's no easy fix, there ain't no pill, but once they know what to do, it's like taking the first step, and if it's in the right direction, you're going to get there. But so we'd say learn what to do first, and then, just like Nike, you just have to do it.
So it sounds like it's continuous, it's exercises, it's a discipline. These are things you need to do just about every day, and especially once you learn them, you need to do them and continue doing them to keep your brain healthy. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And the nice thing about it is in the last 5 years, there's been a real shift, especially in Europe, to educate people rather than just sit and wait for a pill. Because our options right now, if you're over the age of 40, which is the bottom end of the boomers, the odds are very good that you will not live long enough to see a pill that will do a lot of good in cognitive decline. So your options are easy. You either do something or you do nothing. What we think is that what we believe the science is heading robustly toward is a whole group of somethings. And if you do one something, 5 somethings, pretty soon you're going to make a difference. And when you said a moment ago that you have to do something every day, I want to make sure I add that to that. You don't have to do much every day. You're already doing a lot of things, but you have to make sure that those days that you don't have something, 3 somethings, 5 somethings to do, you put in 10 minutes here and 15 minutes there, but you don't just rely on crosswords or a computer. You don't just rely on one thing or another, but you do a combination. Okay.
Oh, wow, that's pretty good. So you're needing to reach not just home centers, nursing homes, retirement homes, assisted living centers, but you're also needing to reach individuals who are not yet living in any of those centers. Is that correct?
That's correct. And remember, the first 5 years that I was working, I was only in assisted living and retirement communities, CCRCs. I was educating the residents Then we shifted very quickly to realize that the staff have brains, the staff have loved ones. So we then expanded to Willamette View and other places in which we trained both staff side by side with residents on the basics of brain health. It allows everyone from the CEO to the van driver to the culinary staff and to the housekeeper to realize that they have those abilities, if they know what to do, to get a smidgen of brain benefit when they go in and talk to one of the residents. So the residents and the staff are trained. And then we moved one step further. We thought, wait a minute, there's another segment in the triad of senior living communities, and that's the families. So we designed events for families to come in and learn about their parents' brain and their own brain. And what we found is that once those three all learned together the same information, they not only took to it, they wanted to know more. And because the brain science is moving so quickly, we're able to go back to those communities every 6 months to a year to do a booster shot or to do a brain health update and find that not only do they want to come back and learn more, but during that gap of the end of the training, they're cutting things out from the newspaper and they're no longer afraid. And remember you said that sometimes people are afraid of the cognitive future? Yes. When they understand the facts of how exciting this field is.
So, Roger, are you finding ways to reach people who are not living in senior communities? You know, I mean, there's people like me who are, you know, we're still at home.
Right.
Are you finding ways to reach individuals like that?
Yes, and the way we're doing that is several different ways. We have public events, and through some of the government agencies that have conferences, et cetera, but we also are going through businesses. There's a model we started 5 years ago in Newberg, Oregon, with one company that saw the potential of having, from the top down, all of their employees understand how to keep what we call the most valuable asset for any business is the brains of the people who are there. Well, this is a firm that had engineers, and they did very risky, in a sense of very complex problems of huge challenges at the bottom of Hoover Dam or at the top of the Golden Gate Bridge when something would break down. They couldn't take the part and bring it to Newberg, Oregon to repair it. They had to invent a machine that could go into the bottom of a dam or the bottom of a construction situation where they had to come up with a unique device. So think of how complex that would be to have the brains of the engineers imagine something that's never been done before and then have their die-cast folks actually produce that. And what they found was that when they started training all of their employees how to keep their brains healthy, they made fewer mistakes. They worked better in creating problem-solving techniques, and now we're in our fourth year of working with them, and the tool and die company is expanding and was awarded a few years ago the Portland Business Journal's Small Manufacturing Company of the Year because they value the overall, the whole person wellness, including brain health. So we're going in through businesses, and we'd like to say it's from top down and from the bottom up, that everyone needs to understand how their brains work. And maybe the most important group that we get to are some of the CEO groups that we've talked to and do half-day trainings for CEOs. Those are the ones that when we lock the door tight and say for 4 hours we're going to really work hard, they want this information too, because nobody can buy their way out of cognitive decline.
No. So do you know yet if you spend time working with people who are still in the workforce, let's say people who are in their 50s and 60s or 40s, 30s, who knows, and you begin working with them, does that mean that by the time those populations are retiring and, you know, moving into some sort of senior living maybe, that there will be less evidence of decline already? And, I mean, do they need to is this something you need to adopt into your life early and keep doing forever? I mean, do you know those things yet about this?
Yeah, it's too early to know for sure, and I'm very cautious because even though I can speak their language, I want to make sure that everyone who's listening knows that Michael and I base everything that we explain on evidence-based science. And a lot of things that we believe are going to happen, we have to just say there are no studies that are definitive yet, and that's the power of yet. Not yet. They're in the pipeline. We can predict that they may come out. But when you have somebody who's 30 or 35 or 40, often they really don't need to do anything but the basics. Their lives are hectic enough. But if they learn the basics when they're 25, 30, and 35, that basic template will serve them well because they're building, Jackie, what's called a brain reserve, that they're doing the right things, especially the basics of sleep, exercise, and nutrition. Those are the three that I think can be overlooked because you're just too busy. But if we have time today, I want to take you through a couple examples of the new neuroscience that time is on your side when you're too busy. If you work smart, you're going to be able to build that foundation. But once you get to 45 and 50, it's never too late to really revise your brain health future.
Wow. You know, that's pretty fantastic. And as you're talking, Roger, I'm thinking how much the health people beg people to get up and move and exercise. Just beg them. I say to people, aren't you reading Dr. Oz? He says, move, 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 and yet people don't do that. And maybe there's a kind of a fatalistic attitude that says, well, my body's going to fall apart sooner or later anyway. I'm going to spend more time sitting here. But, that doesn't have to happen with your brain. You can be brain healthy, to the very end of your life. Right. So maybe there'll be more impetus for people actually taking charge and doing these things if they know what to do, rather than, the exercise. We seem to have a hard time getting people to do it.
That's right, if they know what to do. Now, we have 6 essential areas. We call them cognitive wheels. And an hour is not nearly enough. We spend an hour on each one of these 6 in my class, The Aging Mind at the college. But let me take a moment and tell you why in those 6 that I can go over very quickly the names of them. But the name of one of them we had to change. We had physical exercise as one of the 6, and we hate to say that any of these 6 is more important. Because like cogwheels in a watch, if one of the cogwheels fails, the watch stops. Now, all 6 that we have are so essential that we can prove with the science underneath them that if you fail on one of these, it doesn't matter how hard you work on the other 6, you're going to be in trouble. And we used to have 3, and over the years we've gotten to 6, and we may go to 7 or back to 5, depending on the next wave of science. But physical exercise as being something that is intimidating. When I say, Jackie, you have to do physical exercise, and you're saying, I just don't have time, and it's just a pain. Well, we changed it from physical exercise to physical movement. And we did it based upon, we did it when we realized the message in a book called The First 20 Minutes. Gretchen Reynolds is the physical fitness writer for the New York Times. She did a terrific book, and she realized as she was researching how the body responds to exercise and what doses that are good for what people, she realized that you get most of your benefits from the first 20 minutes. So keep walking, Jackie, if you want to. But if you do the first 20 minutes of an exercise, that's what science has shown is your biggest gain. And she came up with this. This is for people who just feel like, I just can't do it. Humans are born to stroll. S-T-R-O-L-L, stroll. If you and I walk thinking of a baby buggy in front of us, or we're just strolling, but we do it for 20 minutes and talk to each other, that seems to be the starting point. That if you can do that 3 or 4 times a week and make sure it's uninterrupted, not 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes at noon, but 20 full minutes. What do you do with that? You get more heartbeats per minute, not a lot, but more than enough to make a difference. Well, if you adopt that over a lifetime, you're not only allowing yourself to understand that a smidgen is important, and the smidgen that you do is going to be added to tomorrow's smidgen and the next day's smidgen. We use the smidgen for all 6 of these elements, that you do have to do something every day, and most of the time you actually do something, but those days that you just feel you don't do enough, then just do a smidgen more.
Huh. Isn't that interesting? Wow. That's just very interesting. So when you are promoting your MindRamp program, are you involved with all 6 essentials, or are you involved with the ones that have to do with brain science, or do you work with all 6?
Yeah, all of them have to do with brain science, because what we did was to gather the pieces to the puzzle as they drop in. We would then fit them into our full spectrum. We're trying to figure out exactly how you can make the brain healthier and sustain that health over a long period of time. So we fit the puzzle parts that come in, and if a puzzle part that's been there for decades doesn't fit, we really examine it. We toss it out. The statement is true that 95% of everything we know has happened about the brain was discovered in the last 30 years. That's really important to understand, that we're not finished taking out the old myths and tossing them overboard. And once that happens, we realize that we have to teach people all 6 or more of the things you have to do. And they're all achievable, but you have to know what to do. So it's basic, whether it's a short workshop or whether it's our intensive course training, or if it's something that's for a company's wellness program. It's embedding knowledge, and then instead of telling people you have to do this because we tell you to, we say, here's why you need to do this. Here's what happens when you do it. You decide. Yeah,
that's great. So how did you and Michael Patterson meet? You know, your partner in MindRamp.
I was asked in 2006 to be one of 7 people in the country chosen to go to the American Society on Aging conference in Anaheim. Several thousand delegates were looking at this session, that session, and they had a special brain track. And it was the year that Posit Science debuted their first computer game. There was Gary Small from UCLA. There was all sorts of new programs, all computer-based, except this one guy from Jefferson, Oregon, named Roger, who had invented aerobics. And candidly, I didn't really know exactly what I was doing, but I knew I was onto something. And Michael was working with AARP. He was the director of their Staying Sharp national program that brought neuroscientists to 5 cities each year around the country in big sessions to learn what the brain's all about. Well, Michael came looking for someone who they could have come in to consult on how to create a program that was later called Brain Health Ambassadors, to train passionate elders how to teach others how the brain works. Mm-hmm. He went to my session, and instead of going with what was clearly the education model, he took me back to Washington, D.C. and essentially said, I want to hire this guy because he speaks plain English. And at one point there was a joke that I was labeled as the Jane Goodall of memory and aging, because I had spent what calculated out to be 8,000 hours in what I consider to be the most important laboratory of aging, and that's where people live. And once I got back there, Michael and I worked for 2 years on their Staying Sharp Brain Health Ambassador program. When the company, when the economy hit the skids in 2009, they said the program needs to be cut back to 0 for a while. I told Michael, well, now what? I said, I guess I'll go look for another job. And he said, hold tight. Let's start with a company called MindRamp. And I'll tell you, this was an inside one, but I want your listeners to realize that some things happen for a reason. And we are at a conference in Portland working for AARP, and on a napkin, we wrote down MIND, and then we put our initials, Roger Anunsen and Michael Patterson, and we spelled out MindRamp and said, you know, if something ever happens to this program, we ought to do this ourselves. And so since 2009, 5 years, we've been MindRamp because of that napkin, and because the economy dealt us a blow, and we said, okay, let's pick ourselves up. Michael retired instead of going to a different department, and the rest is an adventure in understanding just how powerful it is when people take the time to know what to do, and then you trust that they will do it if they have the facts.
So it's not only a fabulous tool and set of tools and education process, you're in an entrepreneurial venture as well.
Precisely, and it's not easy. There are lots of things. That's why when I met you, Jackie, and I'd heard of you, we're teaching at the school, but we're not on the same campuses. So I had heard of you. You have heard of what I was doing.
Uh-huh.
Once I heard you speak last fall and said, this is the one that Michael and I should be looking at, we revised what we're doing because we were too broad. We were trying to do too many things. So instead of being spread out, we decided to go deep instead of going broad.
Yes, it really matters, especially when you're getting started.
Yes,
so that,
exactly.
You gain in tremendous customer base, strength, profitability, client base, all of those things from, a strong core, and then you can branch out if you really want to do that. And
focus. What you've done in just
focus.
A little bit that we've worked with you so far, and we're going to continue to be working with your program, is that we were not focused on what was just over the horizon. We may have been going fast, but we just didn't really know exactly where we were going.
Yeah, it just makes all the difference. So I'm pleased to hear that, and I know I'm going to enjoy greatly working with you and Michael because I'm very excited about what you're doing and, the impact it can have as well as the need for it in my own life. So it's going to be tremendous.
Well,
so why don't you tell our listeners about what you're doing with the Gerontology department at Portland Community
talk about exciting.
College? Yeah.
Talk about exciting. Here's what happened. Once the class expanded from an experimental class to a credit class, and then it was a required class for anyone taking the gerontology. Now, gerontology courses for 4-year degrees, those are wonderful, and I will never, ever say that they aren't worthwhile. But when an encore career is facing someone and that they have already been through decades of life, they bring a different set of tools and also a different passion followed by a different goal. So Jan Abushakra and I have been working with some wonderful people, Annette Lansing in particular. And what we've been doing is trying to reshape, and I'll tell you in just a minute, rebrand the Gerontology department at Portland Community College. And the rebranding is for a reason, and that's when I first started working there with the one class, and then it expanded to another class. I taught at Lane Community College in Eugene for one term. No matter who I talked to, friends or people in casual discussions, they said, well, what are you doing now? And I said, I'm also, in addition to MindRamp work and monitoring the research, I'm now teaching in the Department of Gerontology. And Jackie, I saw shoulders kind of slump down, and I started really noticing as soon as I said the word gerontology, people changed the look on their face. And it was almost a sigh of, that must be depressing, is what I thought now, or what I realize is that cueing, and that's a term in neuroscience, that when somebody is cued by something, the next couple of sentences might not be absorbed. What I realize is that when I said gerontology, their brains went to the single word gerotol.
Yes.
And that word from the 50s and 60s still leaves a response that's not positive. So what I did over the last year was to try to come up with some way to change that, and I think we're on to something. I decided that instead of saying, well, I teach in the School of Gerontology, I would smile and say, I'm a Geronaut. And when I came up with Geronaut, it was because I felt that when I grew up, the astronauts were the most exciting career you could ever want to have, they were going into a new frontier. They were going into outer space, and nobody knew exactly what was there. So they had a team that stayed on the ground with them as they explored this new frontier. The people on the ground were the aeronautical engineers. So I talked Ben into doing a little bit of marketing with me, and then debuted the marketing this last January. I said, I want to be teaching in the School of Geronautical Engineering. I want those geronautical engineers to design programs and, in fact, the tools that are going to be used by tomorrow's gerontology graduates. Those people who are going into the field of gerontology are what we call the Geronauts, and most of them are the encore entrepreneurs, the encore seniors. Do you know, Jackie, that 2/3 of our students are boomers? 2/3 are over the age of 40, and half of them are over 50. So we're using that, the idea that this is not your grandma's gerontology department, to really invigorate the students coming in the door. And the first class that they are asked to take is not the basics of gerontology. It's managing your career in aging. As you're well aware, someone who goes through a 2 or 3 year program, or in our case we even have 1 year programs, they are getting their information, and then at the end of that, if they decide, now what do I want to do with it, they're learning in reverse. They should take the managing your career first, find out what they want to do, leverage their passion, and then go through the course with a goal. So they aren't wandering aimlessly, and then at the end wonder, where's my job? They're actually, many of them, creating their own solo entrepreneur jobs from the front door all the way through. My room or my class of the Aging Mind is just one of the classes. And when you take the class, I want all my students to have a vision of how they're going to use the material, and that goes for all the classes they take at Portland Community College.
I love that you're doing that. This is so important, as we've talked about on this program for, you may not know, for a very long time, is how many elders, seniors, people in the baby boomer generation and beyond are wanting and needing to find ways to support themselves or supplement their retirement or supplement their income in some way, and Encore Entrepreneurship is perfect for them. And it's just, starting an
Let me add one thing to that, and I'm getting to know, as Michael and I are going through your class in your book right now, we're finding out that if you add something to the Encore Entrepreneur's goal, and that is to find your passion before you decide exactly what you want to do, then you've got that vision. And so many of our students who are coming in now do need to have supplemental income. But instead of working somewhere for years to come in something that makes you not feel good, and those are the chemicals in the brain that just get you depressed because you just don't like what you're doing, we've got examples of our first students who come through our new track of Geronauts that they found what they love to do by looking at what they brought in the front door at age 45 or 55, and then they decide, how could I take my passion, make it a part-time, or in one case I'll tell you about in a minute, a full-time job, and then I continue to love what I'm doing. And I can tell you that's a brain-healthy future for people who can understand that entrepreneurs who come in later in life, encore entrepreneurs, they have the ability to shape their own future. And then I always start out my class with this. This is both brain and for solo entrepreneurs. The best way to predict your future is to create it yourself. Yes, I say that all the time. It's just amazing. The timing is so right. The increase in understanding of brain science, the rise of the aging population, the growth of entrepreneurship, and the decline in, jobs. There just are not jobs readily available for people who are, studying new things, need to take care of themselves. I mean, the jobs just simply do not exist. People come out of college of different programs, degree programs of all kinds, expecting to be hired into bigger organizations to really do their training and internship, and the jobs simply do not exist. So people who are looking to find work, we're saying to them, well, let's create the job that you want. Let's create it for yourself. Yep, and if they did exist, but you didn't have your heart in it, that might only last you for a few years before you're looking for something else. So when we found your solo entrepreneur method and the track that you've got, and we can get to somebody's passion, then I can show you the studies, and that's what we teach in part of our class, that when you're doing something that you had a passion to do and you're sharing with others, that's going to cause serotonin and dopamine to be expressed in your brain, and if you do that a smidgen a day or a smidgen at a time, pretty soon you are in your 80s and 90s and you're still doing what you love to do. So if you're going to have to take that turn of I'm not going to do what I've been doing because of the economy or layoffs or that you are retired and looking for something else, finding your passion first and then trying to create some pathway that you can do what you love to do, that really is a model that's never been tried. But think of the boomer market that doesn't even know what they need yet. And if we can get these Geronauts to go and provide that, they can thrive as well as those that are with them.
Yes, it's really a wonderful thing. People are quite excited about the idea that they can make a living doing what they love.
Yep.
It's a pretty wonderful path to be on. So you're teaching the aging mind then?
Correct.
And is that a multiple credit course? I mean, what does it consist of?
It's a 1-credit course taught on all 5 campuses. It's a hybrid. I record 2 long lectures each term, and those are recorded for those who cannot attend the lecture. Those are 2.5 hours straight through, including everything from taste aerobics to ear aerobics, and we end up having a live version as well as an online version. We are expanding that to a cognitive activity design course that we're working on, a new curriculum, and we may be having a second or an additional The Aging Mind. I'm going to keep The Aging Mind as a single 1-credit course because those are the basics, and that's the 6 cogwheels, and I want to make sure that that stays there. For those that want to come in and just audit the course, or businesses who want to send an employee just to go make sure that they understand the latest in brain science. And the other reason I love working with PCC is that online we can have textbooks that Michael and I write that are current. We can revise them each term depending on the neuroscience. And when we do that, we have people who aren't interested so much in getting a degree or a certificate, but they want to know the facts about their own brains. And the discussion between the students who range from in their early 20s to in their 80s, and they're being educated with the aging brain shoulder to shoulder. There's an intergenerational respect that happens when you have discussions between those ranges of ages.
So, Roger, do you think that other gerontology programs are as forward-thinking as PCC's gerontology program?
I have a single answer, and the answer is no. They aren't. But they aren't yet. Here's what happened last week when we were on a tour from Seattle to Los Angeles. At each stop, and I explained during the talk that I gave and during some of the discussions that happened after and before the event, that the traditional gerontology track is something that's absolutely necessary, but it will not fulfill the needs of the boomers. And once the boomers are over the age of staying in their homes, they're going to be requiring and demanding something else. And we think that our new ideas of teaching how the brain works and teaching what people can do with their own talents as they come back for encore careers, we're predicting that other schools will also see an influx of older students coming back for encore careers.
Oh, they have to be. They have to be seeing them already.
That's right. Well, one of the things that happened in Los Angeles was that we got in discussions with the USC School of Gerontology, which is the first in the world in the 50s to have a School of Gerontology. It's the top tier. But even they were admitting that they've got to do something because they really have to play catch-up. And I'll brag until they stop me that PCC is not only on the cutting edge, but we're fearless in saying we are going to take this to a new level and experiment with things like Laura Liu, who came through our classes and graduated a few years ago with a degree, with a certificate, so she is going out into the elder community. Laura Liu came back in her early 40s with a passion for her prior career, which was a Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey clown. And with that gift of being a clown, but no longer the passion of wanting to be on the road touring, what is she going to do with it? Well, she kind of drifted around to various jobs that she had. She worked as a cab driver for a while and then worked here and there. But then, as she told me, then I found gerontology. She went to PCC to just see if there's something she could do. She found gerontology, and she said, I felt relieved because she also missed her grandparents. That little connection sparked an idea. What if I could be bring laughter to people? So she started studying laughter, and we did a section on this is your brain on humor or this is your brain on laughter. She then found laughter yoga. She then found fitness through laughter. She then became a gerontology activity assistant, which that's a tough road to go because there's a lot of turnover and it's not very high paying, but it's one that there's a lot of joy to it. But she didn't just stop at activity assistant. She then got her fitness certificate, combined them, and formed a company called One Laugh at a Time. Laura Lou is a rare exception so far because she is a pioneer, but others are following in her footsteps. Laura Lou at Oregon State last month gave her second annual workshop to gerontologists when she was one of the featured workshops on how she got from a Ringling Brothers clown to helping elders in her laughter yoga and in her senior fitness through laughter. So it's someone who took a passion and had something she brought into the class that younger brains just don't have, and that's called in brain science crystallized intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Crystallized intelligence is not learned in a book, and you can't buy it at a store, and you can't even get it on Amazon. It's three things: skill, knowledge, and experience. And I'll add for our Geronauts, they come with a passion to help elders. Well, that mix with Laura Lou allows her to have a career that she is helping and loves to do it. Another one is Kate Bowden, who is just finished last year in the same pathway. She had a love for gardening. She was a former dean of an art school and didn't really want to do that any longer. She was in her mid-50s, and what she found was the same thing Laura Lou. She found a passion for helping elders, but she combined it with what she already brought back to school, and both of them are in the track of learning through your programs how to make sure that they look at the business side and they manage their career before they get too far down the road and lost in trying to make a living. They learn how to do that from the beginning.
So, Roger, this is so exciting to me, and I know to our listeners because we've been talking about this topic all year. And so what I'm hearing is that you think there's reason for optimism about the aging population worldwide and for us individually as well. Would you say that?
There is, and the reason is that finally, especially in Europe, they're pushing some science research money away from a pill, and we hope the pill gets here, Jackie. You and I both
Sure.
do. But if it doesn't, the science is now being funded to find out what else can we do with people to let them work on their own by educating them as to what to do. And so the reports from Europe are, the early studies are showing that when people all learn together, then they pull each other up, and the level of cognitive awareness is equal to the level of cognitive health. And so it's really educate the public, and that's what we hope to do.
That's fabulous. So we're getting short on time, but if you had one thing that you wanted our listeners to do, just one thing, what would that be? Well,
I think what you have to do is something. I was on a show in Baltimore, and the last statement from the host was, tell us the one thing that people should do first in their fight against cognitive decline. And my answer was they need to do something, and then 3 somethings, and then 5 somethings. But having a pathway with a goal, especially in the solo entrepreneur world, having a goal of what you want to do is something that you have to be able to plan that out ahead. Don't just go running down the track. It's make sure that you know where you're going and get the knowledge that's out there.
All right. That's fabulous. So I've just loved our discussion. I know we've hardly scratched the surface of, the information that you could share with us, and but I'm certain that a lot of our listeners would want to contact you or get hold of you. Can you share with us your contact information?
Yeah, I certainly can. Our website is mindramp.org, and anyone can email us, and we will get back to them with either answers to questions or directions that we're going. Our 6 cogwheels are available online. You can take a look at those. Our e-books are available. And our e-books are ones that are textbooks, but they are also in that wonderful language, our native tongue, called plain English.
Oh, that's fabulous. Well, listeners, you've had this huge opportunity to listen to an optimistic explorer and expert on the things that we can do to maintain and improve cognitive health, and I hope you've enjoyed this program as much as I have. I want to remind you that this is Solo Pro Radio you're listening to, and this is your host today, Jackie B. Peterson, author of Better, Smarter, Richer, teaching people how to be successful as solopreneurs. Be you a creative, an encore, or other professional or practitioner who wants to be financially successful doing what you love, as we've been talking about today. And I hope that you will go to the website, bettersmarterricher.com, and that you will possibly download the free ebook about the 7 principles, that you will join the conversation on the blog, and certainly sign up for our free newsletter. Thank you again for being part of this program and tuning in, and we hope to hear from you as you tune in again with us next week. We're going to have another great discussion talking about encore entrepreneurship. And one of our guests next week is going to be the president, Rob Romasco of AARP. So do tune in. Thanks again. Goodbye.